Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Antonetti. I'm with the law firm of Shiflane Horn, and pleased to be here tonight on behalf of St. John Properties regarding the Melford mixed-use development. What we're here tonight is we're calling it a community information session. It's an opportunity to learn more about the project, specifically a detailed site plan that's been proposed with the city. It's for a retail component as part of the mix of uses approved for the Milford Town Center, which is kind of the mixed-use heart of the overall Milford project. I have here tonight with me Mr. Andrew Round, a regional partner with St. John Properties, and Ms. Jennifer Hearn, development coordinator with St. John Properties. And for those of you, you may have seen me before on other applications with this project. You may have seen me before on this particular application. It is in the process of being reviewed by the city of Bowie through the three-step process. We did have a stakeholders meeting back on the 14th. We had a Bowie advisory, on the 27th, February 27th. We had a Bowie advisory planning board on the 14th, and we had a council session scheduled for the 19th, but we requested a continuance for a couple weeks to allow the newly elected councilman who's here with us tonight to have an opportunity to kind of come up to speed and also provide us an opportunity to have a session such as tonight. So thank you for coming out on a bit of a drizzly day. What we'd like to do is more or less run through the slides which we presented through the previous advisory planning board, through the stakeholders meeting, which gives you an orientation about what this particular aspect of the Milford Town Center is about. And then we'll take questions. I mean, this really is an informal thing. I know we're separated from tables and such, but it's really an opportunity to have a dialogue, a conversation. So, I'll do my part. Andrew will speak a bit on a few slides, and then we'll open the floor up to questions and comments. So, with that being said, what you see here is a picture of the overall Milford Town Center, which was an illustration included as part of the design guidelines for the overall project. The overall project, just for a reminder, was approved pursuant to a conceptual site plan amendment under the underlying MXT zoning. MXT is mixed-use transportation. So this whole project is zoned for mixed use. In 2015, the conceptual site plan was amended to approve up to 2,500 residential units, 260,000 square feet of office, and 268,000 square feet of retail, in addition to the 1.5 million built or approved to be built employment uses that exist at the project. In 2017, the preliminary plan of subdivision was approved, which laid out the units, the residential units. It approved 1,793 units, so it's a reduction from the 2,500 conceptual units in the conceptual site plan, up to 124,500 square feet of commercial or retail uses, and 235,000 square feet of office. Again, these are maximum numbers, and the preliminary plan of subdivision tested for adequacy of public facilities, transportation, fire and police response times, school adequacy, water and sewer capacity, all the technical aspects from an engineering perspective which would be used as justification for approving a mixed-use project of this size. Tonight we're here on a detailed site plan. And the detailed site plan really is, let me say, there are covenants on the project, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. There's covenants between the developer and the city of Bowie, which sets forth what types of uses are allowed. With the last several years, there's been several amendments to those covenants. One most significant amendment dealt with allowing a mix of uses within the project to include residential and retail uses, such as the ones we're proposing for the overall Milford Town Center. As part of that agreement, it was understood that the applicant, the developer, would file any site plan, conceptual site plan or detailed site plan, first with the city of Bowie before they file it with the county. And the county is the zoning approving entity in this jurisdiction ultimately. But because of the covenants, we have submitted several detailed site plans for this project. The first was a detailed site plan for infrastructure for the rough grading of the land in the Melford Town Center, again, which is about 100 acres in the center of the existing Melford project. As you can see in this overall, it's a satellite image overlaid with an illustrative layout. This was the layout that was shown as part of the preliminary plan of subdivision, which was, again, approved for this project, was approved by the city, was ultimately approved by the county and the planning board. The detailed site plan covers rough grading for pretty much the colored areas that you see there that aren't satellite images. That's been through the process, it's been through the county, that's been approved. The second detailed site plan, which you may have been familiar with, was for the first residential building in the Melford Town Center. It's called the Aspen. It's right where that hand is located right there. That is a 388-unit residential multifamily building. That detailed site plan, that building has structured parking in the center of it. It's meant to be a very compact, sustainable type project. It's not spread out. There's not a large, expansive surface parking. It's a structured parking environment. It's ideal for this compact mixed-use development that was approved as part of the prior approvals that I went through. That has been through the city process, and now that is pending with Prince George's County. Today, we are here for the first retail component of the Melford Town Center. We call it the Retail Village East, and that is shown in the red outlined area right there. That's about 58,000 square feet of retail. Why do we call it the Retail Village East? Well, we use the dividing line of Melford Boulevard, which is the main entry road into the project, and is on the east side of Melford Boulevard. There will be future Retail Village West, which will also be a separate detailed site plan. We're not here tonight for that, but we hope to bring that to you in the future. So it's a continuation, extension of the fabric of uses that were approved in that initial conceptual site plan amendment back in 2015. This detailed site plan application, if we go to the next slide, Jim, please, really is, it focuses on the four corners of the land area that we're talking about. The Retail Village East area is about 6 acres or so of land, and this shows within the four corners of that 6+ acres what the retail elements will look like, where the parking will be located, where the footprints of the buildings will be located, landscaping, lighting, things of that nature. But it really is, in its essence, this is a snapshot of the detailed site plan package. It really is a black and white plan sheet showing how the details of the site lay out. It's not an application which is looking to approve uses. Those uses were approved as the underlying zoning as part of those earlier concept plans that have gone through the zoning process, which I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. That being said, as you can see right here, actually let's go to the next slide. As part of our presentation with the stakeholders and the Bowie Advisory Planning Board, we did render the plan. We added some color to it to show where the landscaping would be. What you see here is essentially 5 retail buildings. Buildings 1, 2, and 3 are the kind of the inline retail stores, something that you would see maybe in a larger shopping center next to a large anchor. We don't have any large anchors within this project, but we do desire to have these inline retail stores. They're very attractively designed buildings. We do include architecture elevations for these buildings as part of this detailed site plan, and Andrew will go over those in a couple minutes. I just want to point out Building 4, which is the most northernmost building, and then Building 5, which is the southernmost building. Those buildings don't have any architecture proposed in this application. You may be asking, why not? Well, those buildings we intend to find an appropriate restaurant user as it pertains to Building 4, a sit-down restaurant, and Building 5, our hopes are to find an appropriate sized food store to serve the needs of the residents and employees of this project. Right now, the retail market is pretty tight. We don't have a specific user. What we're doing is holding those buildings back, and those are going to be purpose-built buildings. There's going to be architecture specifically for those users. If you can imagine a Copper Canyon or another sit-down restaurant, they have certain facades and building types that they like to see done. So what we want to do is engage a tenant, which we're looking for, and we're looking for suitable partners. But when those are identified, we'll come back with a detailed site plan revision that will show how the architecture for those 2 buildings will look like. But for tonight, we do have architecture of buildings 1, 2, and 3, which Andrew will go over. Again, the total building area is almost 58,000 square feet of retail space. You may ask, who specifically are the users or tenants that are going to be in these spaces? We don't know exactly. St. John Properties is willing to build buildings 1, 2, and 3 speculatively. Essentially, they're going to build them without the tenants in hand. And that's more or less a testament to the strength of the portfolio of St. John Properties, that they're willing to do that and make those investments in the project. They did that with Melford as a whole. If you can recall, along Route 3, you can see Melford 1 and 2, the big office buildings. Mr. St. John and the company, they invested and built those buildings without the major tenants lined up in the hopes that those tenants will be there. There are tenants in those buildings, but occupancy has been suboptimal, is a term we like to use. What does suboptimal mean? It's hovering around 70% occupancy, which in the market, the commercial office market, is not good. It's not good at all. In fact, I think the blended rate for the overall project's in the 75% occupancy rate. That's not good. So that's why really we're here tonight. That's why we pursued the mix of uses. That's what successful projects in the region are. If you look at Northern Virginia, Montgomery County, Howard County, other areas, it's not the single use, the myopic single use employment only park, retail only area. Those aren't the more successful projects anymore. It's really the mix of use. That's where employers want to be. They want to be next to amenities. They want to be next to opportunities for restaurants, recreation amenities, which are part of this overall project. Let me mention that. As part of the recreation amenity for this aspect of the Melford Town Center, the Retail Village East, there is a linear park next to the existing pond that is going to have a walkway. It's going to lead down to the existing walkway around the pond itself. There's a promenade, there's a gazebo, there's street furniture, there's other hardscaping elements, which you'll see in some of the elevations and perspectives that Mr. Rao will show after I wrap up. So essentially that's the four corners of the Retail Village East from a bird's eye view. So if we could look at some of the architecture, Mr. Rao will go over that, and some of the vision and visual cues that went into that architecture and why we pursued it. So Andrew, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, good evening. I'm Andrew Rao with St. John Properties. Hopefully I'm not going to practice architectural malpractice here, but I'll walk you through the site. So what I'd like to do is go back to the site plan, which Rob was basically talking about. There's 5 buildings of 58,000 square feet, like Rob mentioned, and what we're trying to achieve is a village feel, because that's the whole point, is that we put the residential, it's compact, it's walkable, it's all of that. It's the new urbanism feel. We have 2 parking fields. You'll see one on the south side that is inside of the buildings. It's purposely put there so it's not viewed from the street. So when you're walking down the promenade of the street, the parking is hidden from the street. So you're trying to preserve that view, that sort of line as you're walking down. So that was done on design. There's 317 total spaces, and 22 of those spaces are on the street. We've also done 4-sided architectural. So when you look at any one of the buildings, building 1 and 2, the whole building is finished all the way around. So a lot of developments, they basically put, the really nice looking piece where the traffic comes in or the parking comes in and the back end is not finished. On all these buildings, they'll be finished on all 4 corners. And you'll start to see that in, later down the slide, remind me when I get to the Tivoli lights, you'll see what I mean. So all the buildings have 4-sided architecture. So when you pull up to the front, so this drawing right here shows what you see when you pull up to the front of the parking lot, which is, remember I mentioned, is hidden. But the other side is what you see along the East-West Boulevard. So if you recall from most shopping places you've gone to, you see just one side. You don't really see the back because it's generally a loading area and it's all, it's not very nice. But because we're trying to activate the streetscape, that's why we finished all sides of the building. Buildings 1, 2, and 3 all have entrance that go, you can walk through the parking lot across the crosswalks and then get onto the promenade. And that promenade that starts at East-West Boulevard in Melford going all the way down is a 15-foot wide section. And you'll see right about in the middle, there's actually two sort of overlooks. There's the large overlook right in the middle of the site where the hand is floating. And to the left of it, there's another overlook which goes to some of the stairways. But that's a 15-foot wide promenade walking that's going down the main street. Let's see. The buildings are also two-story, if you could flip back to the building. So per the design guidelines, which we worked on for, oh boy, a long, long time, and they were recorded with the property. Rob's got them right there. That basically spells out what the overall project has to be designed to. So one of the things that we looked at early on was the city and the county, everybody kind of wanted it to have a two-story feel. So that second story where you see the fenestration at the top, those windows will be lit. They'll be like opaque or sort of clouded, but at night they'll be backlit so it appears that it's a two-story building. Because it is a two-story building, but we haven't activated the top story, but you'll see that as you walk down the street. And that was part of the design guidelines that were recorded with the property. There's going to be benches all the way across the north side of the promenade. If you go back to the site plan. So the north side of the promenade, up along where the green is, and all the way down to the west, there'll be a decorative metal fence, the sort of the fancy-looking fence that you see. So we'll employ that along there. Brick piers. So there are photographs if we start going through a little bit. See these brick piers that are here? They have lights on the top, sort of lights that match the building up there. Did you see that? Can you put the little hand on?
Oh, sorry.
See the lights on top of the piers? So that'll run along the promenade too. The pavilion, the large pavilion that you see there on the right side, that's a 20-foot by 20-foot pavilion, 400 square feet. And that'll be where people can, escape from the sun or the rain and overlook the pond. So I'd like to kind of call that the site part of the exercise. As we move through it, we have a narrow muse. So if you just fly it right there, see that little section? That's going from the parking lot behind the buildings through the two new buildings that are again finished on four sides. You come up here, and that's where the promenade is and overlooking the pond. So I don't know how many people, if you ever go, there's a really nice looking project in Bethesda called Bethesda Row. It's kind of got that feel. If anyone's seen that, you'll know what I'm talking about, where they have restaurants and tables. It's like an Italian or outdoor alfresco cafe. That's the whole idea of having the narrow muse, and we're employing that as the way for getting to the parking lot over to the promenade. Gazebo. There's seating all over, and also seating on some of the brick retention walls. So one of the other drawings, if you go drive right there. So in front of that building, which is on the further on to the east side, we have these little brick pillar things or walls where people can sit and enjoy sort of the pedestrian aspects of it. So now to sort of more the building look. If we went to the buildings. What we're trying to do is we're relating it to the Melford House. We're not copying the Melford House, so this isn't like Disneyland where we've just said, okay, let's just replicate Melford House. That you're not supposed to do that, and the historic preservation people wouldn't endorse that anyway. So what you're trying to do is capture elements of the Melford House, and you bring in the new stuff, and it's harmonious with the Melford House, but it's not a copy. So the bricks kind of have the feel of the bricks. There's sort of the white finish on the parapet. You see up at the top. If you look at Melford House, you'll see that the bricks are different shades of red, and you can't actually employ exactly what the Melford House is because there's about 3 different styles of bricks on it. So it was built at one period, another 100 years they built another bit, and another 50 years another bit. So the Melford House has all sorts of different colors of bricks, of red bricks. So we're just trying to capture that element, and we've also, Melford House is covered with a lot of white on the trim and some of the architectural details. So we've employed that. Again, it's a village design. We're trying to make the scale right for a village design. We're not trying to be Tyson's Corner. That's not what this is, Annapolis Mall. It's supposed to be a convenience-related retail experience for the people that live there and work there. The rooftop units will all be screened. So the beauty of having the second floor, the faux second floor, is those parapets will cover all the rooftop units. So you won't see giant air conditioning systems from the street. They won't be visible. So that'll be quite nice. Again, the fenestration on the top of the windows, that actually kind of breaks up the mass of the building. So I think that's a nice touch. And again, they'll be lit to employ the feel of a real second floor being used. Let's see. Lots of pedestrian spaces. So throughout the project, you'll see there's all sorts of places for pedestrians to enjoy. And we also want that too, because we have a lot of office space across the other side of Melford Boulevard. Those two large 4-story buildings are both 150,000 square feet per building. So there's 300,000 feet just this side of the pond, or sorry, actually that side of the pond. So what we're trying to do is make it that the people can walk over there, and it's very pedestrian friendly. That's on purpose. Going down the line of the buildings, if you have a shot looking down the street. Yeah, that's a good one. They call that the articulation of the facade. So when you're looking down the line of the street, you notice that the buildings kind of move all over the place. They're not one straight line. So what we didn't want to do is create like a military bunker where it's just one straight line of 450 feet of brick. So the buildings kind of move in and out. It almost replicates a natural village where someone built something one year and then it burned down, and 100 years later they did it again. So that's sort of the feel of that. So to just kind of wrap up, we're trying to keep everything in harmony with the Melford House. It's Georgian architecture. This has got a little bit of that flair. And then we're happy to answer questions.
Do you have any plans for the Milford House property? I can't figure out where it is from that diagram right now.
It would be right there.
Actually, if you go back to the conceptual site plan buildings, yeah.
Did you want that one?
That's good. That's perfect.
Do you see all those sort of
You should.
black conic things are coming out of? Yeah, right where the hand's floating.
Okay.
Right there.
So is there going to be any type of fencing around it, or are people going to be able to just walk through the property, or are there plans to open the property so that people could have events and
It
things?
will be open, and the whole point is to have it activated and have people come through it. Right now, we filed a plan with the county, the historic preservation folks, to sort of, they call it activate the house, and what it'll first become is an office for ourselves. So we have a pretty big thing to tackle out here. So we'll turn the ground floor into an office for both leasing, property management, construction. But the whole issue is it's sort of a chicken and the egg. I've met with the Cancer Society, we've met with Clyde's, all sorts of different groups. I think the 911 people, and everyone wants to try to use it, but you can't get it going until there's something around it. And so we're hoping, and so is the county's kind of excited, as once this starts off, then it has more of a chance to function and survive.
I was just hoping it wasn't going to turn into what happened in Bel Air Mansion. That started out as a police department, then it was Levitt's place, and it just destroyed that whole inside. And it took years to get it back to the original, where they now have it back to the original with furniture, and it's gorgeous. And they have vents there. So I was just hoping it wouldn't be used for an office or...
No, we would love to have it as some type of, I always thought a restaurant or a wedding venue.
Right, something
thing.
like that would be lovely.
But right now, there's not enough activity out there. We've been trying to get people interested. So when we kind of take it over ourselves, I think that'll make it look more interesting.
That being said, through the conditions and the other plans that were approved, there were requirements to stabilize the house, make improvements to the house. They've spent over $800,000, St. John Properties, in stabilizing the house, repointing the bricks. If you go in there today, actually, the inside is actually, right, it's back to a residential standard. Beautiful drawing rooms, pocket doors, things of that nature.
Put heat into it.
Put heat into it. Got rid of the black snakes in the basement. They're persistent.
It's a shame to lose all that.
Yeah. Well, that's the point. That's the point, is they've made an investment in it as well, and not just looking for something and waiting and seeing. During that time, they've stabilized it and really kind of brought it back to a condition much greater than what they found it in.
One last question, I'll shut up. What about the cemetery? Have you done anything to try to make that cemetery special? I mean, there's a very special burial in there.
Yeah, well, there is a plan also with historic preservation to have the cemetery cleaned up. I forget if we were putting fencing around it.
Well, here's the thing with the cemetery. For some reason, through a previous developer who conceived, the University of Maryland Science and Technology Center, they still own technically the cemetery.
Okay.
So it really isn't owned by St. John or their subsidiary companies. We are pursuing it, trying to obtain it, but it is up on the hill. I've been up there, I've seen it, it's there, but it is overgrown. It does need, it needs some love and care. It is the plan to, once we have ownership of it, to bring it into the fold, to do restorative exercises, to give it a respectful treatment with fence, I believe is the ultimate. There's a walkway coming from the new Aspen building, a natural walkway leading up to it. It's all planned, but we have to obtain control of it, so we're trying to do that. But the two view corridors, which were part of our design guidelines, they required that anything we built didn't obstruct the views from the Melford House to the cemetery or the historic vista out to the back. So this application respects that, and so will the future ones.
And when I mentioned the fence, it's not to fence people out. The whole point is to get people into it and look around. But there'll be like a decorative fence around it, but it's not going to be like boarded off to people. That's not the point.
Sir.
Thank you. My name is John Fuel. I live in Sherwood Manor, and I have a couple of questions to ask you. You said this has been now designated as MXT, correct?
Correct.
The TU stands for transportation?
Correct.
All right. This morning I went out 20 minutes to 10, and I hit the first light going south. It took me 3 light changes to get through there. Okay. Considering the fact that you have 1,790 units approved, I would guess that 1.5 cars per day, and you add the 388 to it, and you come up with over 3,000 automobiles that are essentially permanently here, except they move in and out. You have one way to get out, and you're either going to go north on 3, go around south on 3, or go through Bowie. That's it. And that's not very much when you consider all the traffic that now goes south, especially, but even north on Route 3. Who is your engineering traffic firm, or your traffic engineering firm, that did the study on this?
Well, we proposed as part of the preliminary plan, which we're past that stage, but the engineer was Lenhart Traffic Consultants. So they prepared a traffic analysis, which looked at the overall development.
And when was that done?
It was done consistent with the 2017 preliminary plan of subdivision. There was another one that...
They have done it recently.
Well, they did it when it was required. It's not a requirement with the detailed site plan.
It's a requirement for people. You have a hotel going up on the corner there. You have all the people who live in Sherwood Manor. You have the people going in and out to all the other buildings around here during the day. And you don't have a way for the majority, that traffic is going to be backed up. At 9 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, it's going to be backed up all the way through Milford. Because you just can't get you only have one road.
We have one road. It's a road that's sized with multiple lanes to come in and out. As you mentioned, the state, when they invested in this project in the 80s, put in this significant infrastructure there, the on-ramps and off-ramps.
I read the letter, and I mentioned this to him. Somebody, that Route 3 is a state road.
It is a state road.
Okay. Has anybody discussed them making it like the Virginia Beach Boulevard?
There are plans for the 301 corridor, which are basically going to have ultimately an express 301 and a local 301. It's a very ambitious plan. It's very expensive. It's not funded.
I'm 79 years old. I will never live to see it. I've been living here since 1974, and I know, 84, I'm sorry. And I know how much things, it took us bringing in the state senator to even have the road changed going into Sherwood Manor so that the kids didn't get killed.
Oh, I'm not bringing it up to say that it's going to get done at any particular time. I'm just talking about, you asked were there any plans. There are plans, but it's all due to funding, and funding is limited. And I'm not here to say that that's going to change everything.
I don't understand why a developer, you're saying the water's been looked at, the schools have been looked at, But you're bringing in people into 700, 1,700 units. Are they all going to be singles or married with no children?
So let me answer the question. Let me answer the question with holistically with this project. You've been here in Sherwood Manor since the 70s. You know that this project was zoned EIA in the 80s. It was approved for several million square feet, several million more than it's developed out here today. So as part of those approvals, they also went through a transportation study, a design, and there were certain trips that were assigned to those millions of square feet of office and commercial. And because of that, the developer, and ultimately St. John Properties, had to make improvements to US 301. They did that. They did that, gosh, a decade or so ago. They made improvements under the county's requirements to the road network. At the cost of several million dollars, they made those improvements. Because they made those improvements, the trips that would have been office trips now have been utilized for a mix of use trips. Those same trips were still earned. It doesn't change the regional traffic scenario, and I've never claimed that it does. The applicant has never claimed that it does. It's a tough scenario. Notwithstanding, this developer has made the contribution to the road network to account for the trips that are being proposed in this overall project. I will also add that it is a mixed-use project. Before, as we demonstrated with our traffic studies, initially, as an all-office, you basically had one way in and one way out in the AM and PM peak hours. So in other words, when people came to work, all the traffic would come in. This was for the multi-million square feet of office, if it could ever have been built, and there's no market for it. It would all come in the morning, and everybody would get sucked out like a vacuum in the afternoon when they go home from work. With a mix of use, it has a more balanced, not a completely balanced, but a more balanced in and out, because you have people coming to live, you have people coming to work, you have people, well, you also have people walking to work and walking to the amenities where they would otherwise get in their car. Without a mix of uses, you still have the one way in, one way out, peak hour vacuum effect. This is an opportunity to at least lessen that and hopefully take some trips off the road. Now, people have criticized that, saying, well, no, that's not going to happen. And we've said consistently, we can't guarantee that will happen all the time, but we can guarantee it won't happen at all if you don't transition to some type of mix of use. That's where the retail comes in. The retail is the opportunity for people, for example, employees, to not get in their car to go to lunch and get on the road at that time. It's an opportunity for people who live in the Aspen building to maybe go to a restaurant or a food store where they'd otherwise get on the local road network and contribute to the local traffic. Will that happen 100% of the time? No. Will it happen 90% of the time? No. But there was an assumption made in the traffic study pursuant to acceptable guidelines of the county that accommodated for that. Again, it's a regional traffic situation, but the plans for the absorption of this traffic was set back way in the early 1980s, and the improvements made to 301 to justify the trips coming from this project were installed by this developer at the cost of millions of dollars. And is it enough to alleviate the regional traffic scenario? No. Those improvements never claimed to do that, but they did meet the requirements that for transportation adequacy as the time of preliminary plan of subdivision. And I appreciate these meetings. It gives me an opportunity to talk about where we came from. But I do want to go back to this detailed site plan doesn't deal with transportation adequacy. It is not a requirement for this. It looks at the four corners of the property area. But at the same time, I'm always happy to interact and talk about how we got to where we are today, at least with this project. So it may not be the most satisfactory answer, but it's the one we've consistently presented throughout all the different hearings and presentations we've made publicly. So
I would like to make a suggestion to you and your company. Everybody that was involved in this project, when you open up these apartments that you're going to put in, these other units, these housing units, every one of you have to live there for 1 year.
Yeah.
I couldn't afford it.
Well, it's, again, I mean,
there, it should work out fine.
ma'am, you have a question?
I'm going to put it on the floor. It's all well and good that we think that one road is going to be suffice. Not only that, that one road feeds out into a residential area, which you have definitely avoided dealing with, for whatever reason in this state, the state, the county, and the local officials do not see the problem with putting that number of people on that land and have one road in and out as a problem. And the suggestion that everyone that has some stakeholder in it to live there for a year is a good suggestion. But my problem is the retail that you're putting in. You don't know who they are. You are building it and they will come.
Right.
They built Bowie Town Center. They came and they leave. They built Marketplace. They built it and it's half full. And they built White Chapel. And they come and they leave. And it's all up and down 301 and Route 3.
Which is an example of when we talk about a mix of uses, why a smaller retail component as a part of an overall mix of different uses is better.
They have the residential around them also.
Well, the Bowie Town Center is a regional area with hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail. And those retail shopping centers, regionally throughout the area, they're all suffering to one extent or the other.
But it's the same design.
No, it is not. It is.
I don't see any difference.
There's a huge difference. Bowie Town Center is a regional mall. That's what it is. It's designed as a regional mall, and it has big things like a Sears, and it has a Macy's. This is 58.
But they also have the residential housing around it to support it.
Yeah, but don't forget, we have 1.5 million square feet of office around this to support it. So what the problem was, let's just go back in time a little bit. When Rob was talking about it, I showed up in St. John in 2009. So 2010, we were at about 60% occupied, so 40% vacant. So when you pro forma out a deal in the real estate industry, in the financial industry, you always load in about a 5% vacancy rate. That's normal, right? So if it's 95% leased and 5% vacant, that's normal. There's turnover. So when it starts to approach 90, everybody in this industry starts to get a little, like, wonder what's going on. There might be a problem here. 85, people are starting to really think, oh boy, there's something wrong. 80%, you're pulling your tie down because you're going in to meet with the lenders. So we were at 60%. So one of the former people here back in 2013 when we were debating this to get the covenant change, it wasn't like there's a problem. That is Rome is burning. 60% is unheard of. That is crazy. So it was going in that direction. It was turning into a white elephant. Similar, I'm not saying Bowie Town Center is, but
60% for what?
Occupied.
A percentage.
Yes.
60% occupied?
Yes.
Or vacant?
Occupied. So remember I said the standard pro forma number is 95% occupied. So we were 30% lower than normal. That's a big problem. And so what was going on is you're getting to the point where the people that were renewing leases are like, well, why would we renew a lease? There's absolutely no amenities in the center. So you have 1.5 million square feet, and we had an 800 square foot deli in there. That was it, in the whole park. So when you're sitting there as a company coming into the region and you look at all these National Business Park or wherever you can go, stuff that we have up in Anne Arundel or Baltimore County, they're like, well, what are my employees going to do at lunch? I mean, there's absolutely nothing they can do. One of the other people that testified was a title company. And what she said the problem they had was there's always a bust in a closing. Whenever you buy a house, always something goes wrong, right? So you're a little bit money over, a little bit under. Someone's got to go to the bank and get a certified check. Well, the only thing they could do, they had to jump in a car and go up to Crofton or go into Bowie somewhere to a bank and then grab something to eat because there's nothing in the center. So what we had to do was amenitize the center. Why, when you're saying that, so other than the 6...
What are you talking about? You're talking about Bowie Town Center.
No, I'm talking about this.
You're talking about this?
Yes.
The office building.
What I'm saying is you have 1 million square feet of office.
That building that you're saying you have tenants in it has still what percentage vacant? Because
40.
it's been vacant
40.
since it's been built.
Currently 40?
What I keep saying, it's 60% occupied and 40% vacant on average. Some buildings, right now, some buildings are totally full and some are totally empty. When you take the overall blended average, it's about 60%. So to follow through what I was trying to say was, so now you're a tenant and you've got a lease coming up. So you've been in there for 5 years and you're about to, you can either renew and stay in the office park here, or you can go to somewhere else. So if you sit there and your employees are like, well, there's one 600 square foot deli in the whole park, and I can't go to the bank, there's no dry cleaner, there's absolutely nothing for me to do as an amenity. Do you think they want to re-sign another 10-year lease? So what we were trying to do was say, okay, look, the way to revitalize the park is to amenitize it. So in order to amenitize it, you had to provide amenities. Well, amenities like a grocery store or a restaurant or a bank or anything like that, they need human beings. So they need people in the office and they need some rooftops. And that was the whole purpose of trying to reinvigorate the site. If you look, I mean, go on sites like Urban Land Institute. That's sort of the academic part of the real estate. It's the sort of the academic piece of it. Just look at it. There's article after article across the entire United States talking about the graying of malls, the dying of malls, the problem with business parks. People don't want that kind of suburban business park anymore. So if you look at all the things that are successful, like a King Farm in Montgomery County, Crown Farm in Montgomery County, Kentlands in Montgomery County, they've all been redone in all these, and they brought in residential, they brought in retail, and then that's reinvigorated the office. So when we talk about this, why do you think people are going up to Watt Chapel? So if you look at the back of Watt Chapel, there's 2 or 3 of these new Bazzuto luxury apartments. There's a senior living center. But now what you're starting to see is offices are popping up. So next time you drive by Watt Chapel, look, and now you're going to see offices popping up. So that's sort of the new urbanism of what we're talking about. You got to activate the thing. You don't want a sterile environment where it's just a sea of office buildings. Nobody wants to do that anymore. Things change. I really encourage you to look at uli.org. It's the Urban Land Institute. It's a professional organization for not just developers, for planners, academics, all the rest of it. Yes?
I think part of the frustration, I don't know who's going to talk, but what is your excuse for Bowie Town Center failing? It is surrounded by offices. By your reasoning, Bowie Town Center should be a raging success and a raging failure. Let me finish, please. You have got townhouses right next door. You've got apartments right next door, and it's surrounded by houses. Bowie Marketplace is in walking distance of thousands of homes, and it's not working. Your equation here for making this work makes no sense in the environment that we're in. We have the Sports Authority right across the road, which has been sitting empty for 18 months now. And we have empty shop after empty shop. They're all surrounded by housing and apartments and townhouses, all the mixed economy people that you're talking about, and yet they're failing. So what is this great golden egg that you're landing on us that's suddenly going to succeed? Because I don't see it. I see no difference.
Well, first of all,
there's offices, houses, townhouses, apartments.
yeah. Let me answer. First of all, I don't work for Bowie Town Center, so I don't know.
You were saying why it was failing, though.
I never said it was failing.
And you said that it was failing because, well, yours is going to work so much better.
It's a different design.
Because yours is such a different.
If someone could Google what the square footage of Bowie Town Center is, I don't know. I'd love to know the square footage of it. It's probably 300,000 or 400,000 feet. This is 58,000. It's probably bigger than that, actually. But what I'm not here to do is I'm not disparaging Bowie Town Center. I'm not part of their company. I don't understand their practice. But when you look at the new sort of design that's kicked in the last 10 years, they're not building the regional style malls anymore. And I'm not saying there's anything bad with Bowie Town Center. I'm definitely not saying that. But I think when you look at the Croftons of the world or the King Farms and Kentlands of the world, they are different because I can tell you one thing. That whole thing you're looking at, the interior part, that's on 90 buildable acres. That's very compact. So it's a high-density, mixed-use, compact site. And that's what people are doing now. They're not doing the spread-out ones where
the marketplace is spread out and far.
It's a different thing.
Well, it's a different mix. Marketplace, Town Center, they don't have 1.5 million square feet of office around which are trying to lease at the same time. This is really somewhat of a unique animal and mix. There's no analogous mix in Bowie to say that, you know, Melford won't work because of one of these other projects. It really is a unique animal. And
I would just encourage you to just go look at, just for laughs, go to Washingtonian, King Farm, Kentlands, and Crown Farm up in, they just all happen to be in Montgomery. But they're up there. Take a look.
I've lived in Gaithersburg for over 20 years. I've been here for 11 years. And I'm familiar with every last one of those shopping areas that you're talking about. What you didn't mention was the new one that they put up on Shady Road at Cherry Hill, which they replaced. That's the football field there. It's King's Farm. It's the back of King's Farm. But what I'm trying to say, all of those developments and all of those places have multiple roads to go in and out. They're all for major highways. What I am saying, this doesn't make sense to have one road in and out. That's all I'm saying. And you're going to think that people are going to live there and walk across the street to go to work. That's not necessarily so.
But if they don't do anything, they don't have that option, do they?
Well, you can't do it unless they hire you.
Yeah.
The real question is this. There was once, a number of years ago, an idea of having an entrance and exit off of 301 into Milford.
You mean 50, Route 50?
Pardon me?
It was 50, it was Route 50. There was a second interchange.
50 and 301
Yes. But
are the same road
off of 50.
where Milford is, okay? So, all right, I will rephrase that.
Right.
In 5301, there was supposed to be an exit and an entrance for those particular roads. That's why the plan is called. She probably telling me to shut up. Why is that not considered a viable thing?
So in 2009, that interchange, it was called a Trumpet Interchange on Route 50. It was a second interchange that was in the master plan of transportation. It wasn't a requirement of this project ever, really, to build it through any preliminary plan of subdivision. But as a potential future connection, it was in the master plan of transportation. I think it's either 2009 or 2010, it was taken out of the master plan of transportation. One, because of, I think, the impacts, the lack of permittability. You couldn't pull a permit for it, given the Federal Highway Administration's requirements, the State Highway Administration's requirements. But secondarily, it wasn't deemed necessary given the investment that the state and county had already made into the road network that went in there. So it's no longer part of the master plan of transportation. I just say, even if you were to put a road like that in today, the cost would be astronomical. It would be beyond the pale for any project to have to put that in by themselves. I mean, you're talking probably a $50+ million interchange to put in.
The president up, he's trying to
Get rid of maglev train.
Hey, so back to the shopping. I mean, that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is the shopping, the retail section. Just, again, back to Bowie Town Center, just for an example. We're not going to have a Sears. We're not going to have a Safeway. We're not going to have the big box stuff like a Best Buy. This is totally opposite. It's real small convenience-related stuff. So we'll have probably one restaurant. If you could go to the site.
One sit-down restaurant.
One sit-down restaurant. See Building 4 at the top? That one? Now, when I say these names, it makes me crazy, so don't say that these names are not coming, but these are categories, all right? So I'm giving a category and names that fall within a category. Again, I'm not saying these people are coming, but here's a category. They could, but don't say we don't have leases or negotiations. Right. I hate when I do this. So for the big restaurant up on Building 4, such as a Copper Canyon or a Stanford Grill, which they have up in Columbia, Founding Farmers, if you're familiar with that, Busboys and Poets, that kind of stuff, Clyde's. That's the type of restaurant up in the top, because what you see with that outdoor seating area, it's going to be overlooking the lake. So that's the type of restaurateur that we're looking for that. That's that type of experience in that category, remember. Then the other stuff will be things like building number 5 down the bottom. We're trying to attract like a small grocer. Again, these are just categories representative of names, but things like a Trader Joe's, an Aldi, a Lidl, Fresh Market, Moms. So they're the little ones. And you know, and everyone reads about all this, the change in retail. Retail is like the craziest thing in the world right now. All the concepts are changing. So they went mega big, like a Wegmans, and now they're going back down in scale. So what this is trying to do is provide, if we can get it, I mean, we'd love to get one of these, is there's a place where you can run over and grab milk or bread or eggs or stuff, sort of the stuff that you just need. You're not going to Costco with a giant cart to buy toilet paper and all that other bulk stuff. That's not what this is about. Similar thing in, with the grocery guys, I was just told that, you know, now the whole new thing on the smaller ones is that they're essentially selling prepared foods. So I guess it's like the Wegmans model where you go in and they've already got the stuff prepared for and you're buying it. So the way the retail in that grocery element is starting to change, it's going prepared foods, not bulk. The industry obviously is changing like crazy. So that's kind of what's going on there. Other uses that are within the center, and again, this is neighborhood convenience. It's not a shopping center. There's a big difference. Or things like, there'll be like a casual dining, like a Noodles or a Chipotle, something like that. Sushi, a Five Guys, something like that. On the inline stuff in buildings 1 and 2 or 3, any one of those. And then the average convenience-related thing like a salon, somewhere you get your hair cut or nails done if you're a woman. Dry cleaner, not on premises, you know, where they drop the stuff off and ship it away, that kind of thing. Fitness studio, there's a new chain of smaller fitness studios coming out, boutique, not big like Gold's Gym. It's like I'm trying to say, all the retail stuff is changing overnight, so they're scaling up and scaling down. A FedEx, like those UPS FedEx drops, the little boutique-y things.
My question is, everything you're describing there is going to be to support the people living at the Aspen Apartments?
And the office.
And the office around you?
And the townhomes that are coming at one point.
Where are the townhomes going to be located?
If you can go back, Jen, to the preliminary point, yes, that one. It's the, right, off to the east, these lots with a hand button.
So what you're truly trying to describe is live, eat, dine, shop, all in that one area?
And then across the bridge, you see there's a little bridge there and there's a giant open space. If you drive through now, there's a hotel being built. And from memory, I think it's 140 or 144 unit Courtyard by Marriott. That fellow has two other Marriott concepts behind him. But one of the reasons that he located here, well, actually he didn't. He's just excited now that we're going to have more office traffic. So the way he views it is he can't lose. If we can get the occupancy from 60% up, he's going to obviously have more business travel. So business overnight travel.
That is not part of your property.
Not part of our property. But his name's Dr. Ernest Murphy, but when he found out we were proceeding along, he was quite excited because, like I said, if we can get the occupancy up and grow the business travel, he'll get overnight business stays for the park. It's 1.5 million feet. We have the Census Bureau. We have the Institute for Defense Analysis. There's a lot of sort of governmental company branches there. He liked that. But on the weekend, he also liked it. Now, when we had the residential element, you don't want your brother-in-law and his little kids running around the house. They have a place they can also stay on the weekends. So for him, it was a no-loss situation.
So I have a question for you. I have lived in Bowie all my 55 years, and I think, and we don't mean to attack you, that's not us, that's none of us, but we're losing our identity as like a small town, and it's difficult for us, and you have to understand, we've been asleep for a long time. We let these things happen and we feel like, okay, we're getting it shoved down, and you're a businessman, and I understand that. You're entitled to make profit. I get it. It's not ideal for any one of us, and it's a beautiful property, and yes, I've been in the Kentlands, and I work in Rockville, and I live here, and I make that drive every day. It is a different demographic. It is definitely a different situation with the roads.
Right.
But as I came in, and I don't know if you had noticed about when Levitt built this property, he was all about that community, and he dedicated property to build schools on. And so you never really answered when that traffic survey was actually physically done, but it was certified in 2017, so that's kind of like,
Right, the counts, I think, were
So,
done
and it's like-
in late 2016.
Right, and it's like we have a different demographic here because in Rockville and Bethesda and Gaithersburg, we have public transportation. You have a lot of things that we just don't have. We don't have a metro station like in Silver Spring, so it is different.
It is different.
And we don't want to be Silver Spring, Gaithersburg, or one of those things. And so it's hard for us. So we're not attacking you, and I understand that, and yes, you should. It's a beautiful property, and ideally, I hope it works, but it's just when you are sitting there going, where are they going to get gas? Are they going to get a job in those two big buildings? I surely hope so. Do they work for the NSA project that's in the back? Where's the gas station? They have to come out to that. You know, hopefully there'll be more doctors back there, and hopefully it'll all work. But it's like, where's the school? Those demographics, if anybody's been around, we used to have so many. We had Kenilworth, Buckingham, Tulip Grove, Rockledge, Fox Hill. This was a school.
Right.
The ones that we have right now are so huge. Has St. John's Properties ever considered donating a portion to say, here, Prince George's County School Administration, we will donate to you a 5-acre site here so that these kids, when they come, because you're right, it's not going to be just, you know.
I mean, it doesn't work like
it's
that. I mean, I
it
served.
was in 1960.
I just served on the Senator Miller had me on the School Construction Commission for the state of Maryland. It was the Knott Commission, and we studied this stuff for a year.
So
I mean,
now-
school, not here because it's not necessary. It's a
Where will
problem.
they go to school?
We're
But,
really
all right, with the schools, when we studied this as part of the plan, the covenant change, there was an analysis done. Believe it or
When?
not,
When?
within the last 5 years, it was done. It was done in 2017 for the preliminary plan. It was done before that when we negotiated the covenants. The Bowie schools are under-enrolled. Can you believe it? They're under-enrolled.
Don't know.
They're under.
Absolutely do not.
They're under capacity.
We already have an annex to support the high schools.
I know, that's what I mean. It's
They're
like-
under capacity. They're under capacity. And with regards to the contribution, well, St. John did he donate the track at Bowie High School?
We did $250,000 at the Bowie High School track. We did $250,000 at Bowie State.
With regards to the fees, there are impact fees for any residential development. There is a school surcharge that the residential units will have to pay.
But that money goes to
It doesn't go to
Prince George's
us.
County, sir, and that's the issue.
It
that
These are
goes to
public
Prince George's County.
Yeah, but where does the money go if
It's
it's a
public
school? It's not, Bowie doesn't have its
County.
own school system.
I understand that, but that
Prince George's.
impact fee goes to the county, and we
Right.
rarely see any of that money. Our schools are falling apart, and you're saying you're going to put 1,700 new homes, and it's all going to be fine and dandy, and we'll squeeze them in. Am I mistaken in that you guys own surrounding property? Is that not correct?
Surrounding property where?
Outside of just this plot
No.
that's being discussed? No, you do not have
In-
any?
In Bowie?
You don't own that?
The surrounding.
No, we don't own that.
Other properties along Route 3 that if you ride along, you see your logo and your initials up and down.
Oh, those are the Maryland highway beautification signs. That's what that is. So we pay a fee to the state, and they clean up the garbage off the side, and they put our name on it. Yeah. So back to your point, though, when you talk about this, I've been here.
It's a different demographic is what I was trying to make
Right.
that. And it's like when we, to end my point, I'm sorry I'm being so verbose, but you're not. Please. You can rent a house in Bowie, a nice house, a 4-bedroom, 2-bath house for $2,000 a month, and you have a yard, and you can take your kids to the local school, et cetera, and hopefully you're paying property tax as an owner, or even as a renter, the ultimate owner. But when you you have an apartment or a townhouse that's going to cost, in a mortgage, people, I don't know about you, but I would seriously not pay $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment if even had a gym and I had access to food at the bottom. It's like, I guess I'm just too frugal. My parents were,
It's
children
everybody's
of
choices, right?
It is, but it's just
Again,
like, I hope you understand
I
that
can't encourage you
demographic.
enough
That's
to
very different from Howard.
go to ULI.
Howard and Company.
Just start reading the stuff. It's written by,
I know.
what I like about it is it's the academic world, It's the business world. It's all over the place, if you're familiar. But what they talk about is two things have happened. It's called renters by choice. So a lot of these millennials saw their parents get wiped out in the last housing crash. So they're like, the last thing I'm going to do is put a $40,000 down payment down and see my house devalued by 30% 6 years later. So a lot of people, a lot of people, especially the millennials moving forward, they're like, home ownership is not all it's cut up to be. The other thing is the down payment issue. So a lot of these people want to do that. We're going to own the building, and that's a $100 million thing.
That's why we're concerned, because we have these houses that we all probably own at this stage of our life, and we want to be able to resell it.
Right, and you will. I would argue your property values are going to go up. Where I live, they put up apartments all the time, and people, no one's moaning about that.
Okay, I know where you live, sir.
Well, where do I live then?
You live in Baltimore County in a $1.2 million house.
I live in Kensington, Maryland, which is in Montgomery County.
Okay.
So you're about 80 miles off, 40 miles off. But,
well, okay.
So.
But I think we're talking, if we're going to say we're comparing chalk and cheese here, your house compared to what we're talking about in Bowie with 11 home built in the 1960s is completely incomparable. And you're talking about it doesn't work that way, reserving land for a school. That's exactly what Levitt did with this community. This is the ultimate planned community. He put aside a school for every neighborhood when he developed these homes originally. And that's what happened 40, 50 years ago. So to say, well, that it doesn't work that way, we're living proof that it does.
But the problem is, if we have all the rules, we have all these prescriptive rules that we have to follow. And in fact, tonight isn't one of them. We've deviated off some stuff. But so they say you have to test for this, you have to test for that, you have to test for that. It's all in books, and you just start flipping through, and they come in and say this is what it is. It's not like we decided, well, we don't want to fund the Prince George's County school system. Like Rob said, every single building permit that's pulled is about a $24,000 fee. It's $13,000 something for the schools, and the balance is for public safety. So every single permit that they pull, and there's, what, 1,700 of them? I mean, there's a lot of money flowing into the Prince George's system. Do I control the Prince George's County school system? I don't. But Bowie doesn't either. So when you say, let's build a school in Bowie, that's not under the purview of the Bowie City Council. That's a county thing. So I can't influence or move that needle.
I just thought it would be like a, olive branch offer, and I think the best thing that we can all do is vote out our county executive.
But the other thing is, don't forget, Rob mentioned it at the start, and I think this is the most impactful thing you got to remember is, when this entire project was developed, it was anticipating, and I'm off, maybe I'm off by a few thousand, but let's just call it 3 million square feet amongst friends. And we've built about 1.5 million square feet, and it's petered out. Remember the 60% thing? It was already set up and permitted to double everything you see out there on that site. We could double it, and we had permits to do that, to build it up to 3 million square feet. So when you talk about the traffic, it was always going to be the same traffic. And back to your point, when they tested it back 7, 10 years ago, right? They say, okay, you want to build all this square footage, you owe us X, and it's millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars. So the problem is, and this is what's most frustrating for me, is when it was permitted and calculated and they say, hey, St. John, you owe us this millions of dollars in improvements to the freeways, the highways, it was all done. The problem is it was done 7 or 8 years ago when I first started here. I started in 2009. But we basically collect a bucket of chits for it. So what's unfortunate is, let's pretend we started and we paid the fees now and we started tomorrow morning. You would then say, oh, those guys got tagged with the improvements at 301 and 450. So those road improvements you saw 8, 9 years ago at 301, 450, that's what this thing paid for. So those millions of dollars that we spent on the traffic studies saying, this is the prescriptive thing you have to do to fulfill your traffic studies, all those millions of dollars were spent 8, 9 years ago. What's unfortunate for me today is no one remembers that we did that 8, 9 years ago. Now they're saying, well, they're getting off scot-free. We're not. We spent millions of dollars. So there's this like 9 or 10 year lag, and now we're kind of saying, all right, we're taking those chits off the table that we invested 10 years ago. Now we're moving forward. So think of it as I'm cashing in a treasury bond. It's just a 10-year lag, which is frustrating. But back to the retail. So again, it's convenience, neighborhood retail. It's not a shopping center. I can't stress that enough. You're not going to have big box destination stuff. So destination retail are things like Best Buy, Bass Pro Shop, all that kind of stuff.
Sorry, you had a question in the back?
one of the things that, listening to her comments and then your response, she talked about houses, single-family houses with a yard renting for $2,000, and the apartment single apartment running the same amount. You went directly into home ownership and how they wanted to rent instead. You weren't addressing at all her point that why would people want to rent a one-bedroom apartment for the same amount they could get a full house just a little bit down the road?
Right. I guess what I'd say...
Hang on, before you go forward. My concern here is, I understand that you're trying to make back your investments and all that, and that's perfectly reasonable. But I was one of the voters who voted for the covenants of Melford to prevent all of this in the first place, and I feel let down and betrayed by the people I elected who changed the covenants of Melford some years ago to allow any of this to happen. So I'm already kind of soured to the concept. I'm not seeing why this is beneficial to our community. That's a problem for me. And you're the same developer whose plan has already kind of petered out at that 60% usage. And now we're doubling down to build it up again. And I hear you're doing all this strategizing, but I'm not convinced that you're going to do any better with what you're putting in now than you did with what you've done so far.
Well, I guess the easy thing was to do nothing and watch the thing go down to 10% occupancy and go bankrupt for the 5th or 6th time. I mean, when we took over in 1999, I think we were the 4th developer in on this. So what I would argue originally was when it was envisioned to be the Maryland Science and Tech Center, I mean, maybe that was probably the genesis of the problem. So it was cooked up in 1985, I think, is when it started out, and that was when it was sort of the whole plan went through, and there was the original annexation. Maybe they made a boo-boo back then and just overestimated what it was. So 4 developers in and bankrupt, and none of them terrible. And the market maybe just said, hey, look, this was never really envisioned to be a 3 million square foot thing. So what you do then is you say, okay, well, what does the current market look like? In 50 years, maybe it'll be different again. I mean, when Levitt was building the community here, I don't think they're building Levitt communities again, right? I mean, I've been in Westlake Village, California, and Columbia, Maryland, same developer, Rouse Company. But it's not like they're going around the United States doing that again. Things come and go, and things move and whatever. And back to your example about the house, the $2,000 rent versus the house. I mean, you can go look at, I think the night we had the stakeholders, one of the people encouraged people to go to Arundel Preserve, I think it's called. They kind of look like W hotels. So you walk in the lobby and there's these gigantic fancy lobbies and everything is like really, really nice. Like you're in a very expensive Four Seasons hotel. People might say, you know what, I don't feel like cutting grass, I don't want to look at my driveway, I don't feel like taking the garbage out, and you know what, I want to live in this sort of W hotel and I'm happy to pay $2,000 a month for it. It's a choice. I mean, it's not for everybody. I don't live in one. I've lived in apartments before, so I wasn't running around breaking into cars, I lived in an apartment. So everything's fine, it's just that people have choices, just like you choosing the house, they're choosing this. I don't know what else to say on that one. I mean, I think that's logical.
I wanted you to hear that she asked a very specific scenario, and you didn't answer that scenario. You turned it to something else that didn't address what you were.
Well, hopefully he answered it now. So. Yeah. And if I didn't, I'm sorry.
And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
What kind of a timeline are you looking at like this? I think the biggest problem with not getting our buy-in is I work in Columbia, and my commute from 175 on Route 301 to my house in Bowie is as long, probably longer than it is from Columbia to 175. So I think that and I know you've already done your surveys and put your money in and all that kind of stuff, but I think that you might get better buy-in, and I can see how all this could theoretically work, but our lives are impacted by the traffic, mostly.
Right.
And I think that if there was a way that you could
Partner with the state.
well, put the full court press on or help us organize to somehow get that issue alleviated, I think you would get buy-in. And I think I don't know if I let you answer, but like, what kind of a timeline are you looking at for this? Like, or is your business plan for your offices to do like shorter term discount lease to get tenants in there, like for 2-year leases or whatever at a discounted rate? It's better than having them completely vacant. At least you'd have the bodies as while you're building the rest of it out. But I think for me, the biggest obstacle is the traffic.
Right. But see, we're all talking, I mean, so your commute, you choose to commute from here to Columbia, and you had a commute, I've got a commute. It's not like everybody sits there and says, okay, I'm sitting like this, and I walk from my house to my office 20 feet. We're all doing it. We live in the Washington metropolitan region.
That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is when you have all those houses and those businesses, and we're concerned about all those 1,700 cars, whatever, coming out onto 301 where you can't even move now.
No, but then taking a shortcut through our neighborhood. That's all. That's all. It's coming through our neighborhood, throwing trash, speeding down Bel Air Drive. You've probably been on it, past the mansion and stuff. That's what it is.
I'm not saying St. John put up $25 million more dollars to Prince George's County to fix 301, but I think that there's got to be some sort of a way for us to, and partner with you, whatever, put the full court press on the county to like alleviate this issue, because people are going to be spiteful if you don't, and they're not going to visit those shops. I mean, I know that like your target customer is not us, we're homeowners, right?
We're not
outside of the business unless we visit really restaurants or whatever. But I think that I think if you could find some way to help us either organize or put the full court press on to get that problem alleviated, I think you'd get a lot more buy-in. I really do. I don't know. I'm speaking for myself. I don't know.
I might say something. I own property in Philadelphia. It's on a major road in Philadelphia. 2 blocks down. My place is rented. Okay? No problem. 2 blocks south of me, where there's no roads to get there, it's something like this, they're empty. Here's something you might want to consider for the future. You start getting this big bottleneck that's going to happen, and trust me, it is going to happen. If I was renting from you there and paying you for the doctor's office, whatever it would be, because I got 2 doctors I see up here, right there in Melford. You're either going to have to really deduct their rent for them, really reduce it, or they're moving, because their customers are going to be complaining about having to sit there trying to get in and out. And trust me, it's going to happen. Think about it. The transportation, I'm sorry, this is the biggest, the road to the transportation is the biggest issue right now. I think your retail center is a great idea.
It's nice.
I really do.
It's beautiful. It's pretty. It's like we wish you'd done
But the transportation in and out of Milford is your problem. And you're going to find that in the ensuing years, it's going to be your major problem as people move out.
And you're going to get a lot of negative vibes from those of us who live here and have lived here since '63 on and on. The problem is you're backed up. Human nature. We look for shortcuts. And I can tell you, I know because I used to commute to Tyson's Corner. I know every shortcut between here and there when I worked there. We look for shortcuts. The fastest shortcut, come out of Melford Boulevard, cross 301 onto Bel Air Drive and shoot down. To Kent Hill, boom, down Kent Hill. And if Bel Air Drive is crowded, you cut up Osworth, Beaverdale, cut to Stony Brook, and go from there. Human nature, we look for shortcuts. Working at alleviating the traffic, working to put pressure on the county, work with us, and that will take away a lot of the bitterness that you are experiencing. It's not a bad idea. If I were moving in this area and I could afford the 3,000 for a 2-bedroom, or how much is it for a 2-bedroom? Okay. I have it made. I inherit the house my parents bought in '63. They paid $18,500 for it. It is quadrupled in estimate. I bought my mother off, I inherit it. That is not going to happen. However, if I were coming back from my last tour, I would love that. I liked it. I lived in cities in Europe and in Africa and in South America where you had that concept, where the only time I had to drive is when I had to go to the embassy to work. I liked walking. It was great. It's a great concept. But the problem you're dealing with is the negativity of the traffic. 301 sucks. You try coming down 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock on a Friday, you are backed up north and south. Well, I start at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock on a Friday, and it will go until 8 o'clock some nights. We've had nasty fatality accidents on 301. You're blocked. It is choke points. Work with us to put pressure on the county, widen the lanes, give this lovely opportunity here for another exit and entrance. Get another one.
Hey, I'd be happy to sit down with Delegate Valentino Smith and
okay, I'm not speaking on her behalf.
No, but you know.
I'm here as a resident. I am not talking
I know,
on her
but you
behalf.
mentioned the electeds. She's an elected.
No, because what you're dealing with, yes, it's a state highway, but the way the chain goes is county delegate, county council person, Todd Turner, our representative, works with the county. They say, no, this is strictly state. Then you go to your 23 elected representatives. I am not talking on Geraldine's. This is me. I live here. She lives here too, but this is me. Don't pull what the mayor did.
I didn't pull anything on that.
Oh, no. The mayor accused me of representing her. I wasn't. I've lived here on and off since 1963. I went to this building when it was an elementary school. I went to Tulip Grove when it was first built. I went to Kenilworth. I went to Bel Air Junior High, which is now the annex. I live here. I have vested interest here. I'm not against your project. It's very nice. You're looking at building a nice self-contained unit, which is, yes, the trend. What I'm saying is the traffic and the cutting through Bel Air Drive, Bosworth, Beaverdale, is what is setting off our negativity. The train has left the station. We can't stop it. I'm not looking to stop it. What we are looking for you to ask you is to help work with us, work with the county, and if the county lets you down, then work with us to put pressure on our elected officials. And going back to the school, this is where I do know. Bowie schools are overcrowded. I don't know where you got your study, but Bowie schools are overcrowded.
We don't do the study.
I know you don't do the study. I don't know who did your study. But
No, I mean, we don't even pay for it. It's done by the
Board of Education.
Yeah, we have nothing to do with it.
The schools are overcrowded now. Trust me on that. What we're asking of you, what she's asking of you is, what we're asking of you is, we're not against you, but unfortunately, the biggest issue is the traffic. Being stuck on 301 and not being able to get in and out. Work with us, work with the grassroots effort to work with the county, and if the county doesn't go anywhere, work with us to put pressure on our elected officials at the state level. That is what we're asking of you. And right now, I'm getting a little stone-faced, and your body language is telling me you're tuning me out.
This is how I say.
Open your arms.
Open here, look.
There you go. Your body language. I am not a fan of St. John's property for other reasons, but I am willing to work with you and these other people to alleviate what is our #1 concern, the traffic.
Right.
And not having them cut through Bowie.
We're putting up a gate.
No, we don't want a gated community. We're not negative that.
Ma'am, we're open to any scenario that realistically and appropriately can help the traffic scenario.
When do you expect to start?
Well, yeah, we'd like to start the infrastructure. We were trying to hope to start it in the spring, so we might start it in the fall or next spring. So the first thing is you got to put in the infrastructure to get over to the Aspen, and then when you start to cut this road, East-West Boulevard, that's the very first thing. You got to put in water and sewer in the street. You put it at the same time we're building the Aspen. We were envisioning of doing this.
It's actually already started. One we haven't talked about is there's a 140-unit assisted living facility. The Tribute or Thrive Assisted Living Partners out of Atlanta do a state-of-the-art, fantastic, high-tech assisted living facility. You may see it. You live next door to it, so you've seen it. I represented them through their entitlement process, and they were super excited about the prospects of this transitioning to a mixed-use, vibrant center. In fact, they're a little paranoid that it might not happen given some of the process and delays that have occurred with it. But the representative, Mr. Saban, came to the last council session for the Aspens, and he basically said, "I'm so excited. Can we get it going now?" That's why they came here. So it actually is already happening, and they chose to locate here because of the opportunity to be part of this mix of uses here. So it's just, it's one part of it, but it's beginning. You're starting to see dividends pay off for people, people getting excited about a change here at Melford as opposed to a 60-70% occupied employment center.
I just wanted to, again, stress what everybody here seems to think. And that is, the problem is the traffic. It's not what you're building here necessarily, it's the traffic. Now, we can either pull all together and get this, or we can go this way, and we're never going to get anything done, except I will be writing letters to a lot of people, and we're not going to be real nice when they hit the left. The first one's going to go to the governor. So I want to know what they intend to do because of the safety of the children that live in Sherwood Valley.
Okay.
You keep kind of changing your defense of the traffic situation. People are commuting, so that's going to take them out of the area, so we don't have to worry about them. They're going to stay in the community, so we don't need to worry about them. But the problem is, well, one question. I'm going to ask you one more. What percentage of the residents are you reliant for your retail? Is that going to be the majority of your customers that you're hoping for?
We're assuming.
The majority of you're not wanting to pull people in.
Well, I mean, you'll have, let's take the.
Can I just ask the second question?
Yeah, sure.
So you can do it. The second thing, which is the most terrifying for me, is you do have a one-way in and one-way out. You do have a senior center. You do not have a full-service hospital in this unit, correct?
No.
Okay. So, say we have a serious accident, which happens all the time, on your one-way in, one-way out. What is going to happen? Or, what's going to happen if you have two crises within your unit? A serious accident and, for instance, a fire within the community. Your one way in and one way out is not going to be able to cope with those two scenarios. And I think you're going to have loss of life.
Well,
and it terrifies me.
The way I'd answer it, the one way in and one way out is the same width as a lot of interstates. So if you go Interstate 81 from Syracuse to the border, it's 2 lanes this way and it's 2 lanes that way. That's 2 lanes out and 2 lanes in. So when the fire life safety people looked at it, they said, well, it happens all the time. We block 1 lane off here and then we just route the people up the other lane. The problem I'm just saying is if the professionals are telling us that, I'm not a fire life safety guy, I'm a layperson. So if the professionals say, hey, this is what we think and this is how it's going to work, we're good with that. As a layperson, I'm not going to sit there and squabble them and say, well, I don't care what you've learned for the past 30 years. I don't agree with you. So remember, it's 2 lanes in and 2 lanes out, and they reroute stuff all the time. There's shoulders. It's wide. I wish I had
I've seen it.
I wish I had the width of the thing. It's wider than an interstate. Probably as wide as Route 50 from shoulder to shoulder.
Right, but I live here, so I know that area very well. It still worries me greatly.
Okay.
But the other question is the retail.
Yeah.
You've got all these people in one restaurant. That seems.
Well, no, that's one designated building for a sit-down tablecloth restaurant.
Remember
There's
the
opportunities
categories?
for buildings 1, 2, and 3 to have smaller, faster food, not fast food, McDonald's, but fast casual.
Yep.
And then the grocery store with the prepared foods, there's an
Sushi deli,
opportunity.
Yeah, I mean-
that you had listed off.
Yeah, so like at the top, remember building number 4, such as,
Such as, but not guaranteed.
That's what you
Right.
for 1, 2, and 3.
But see, but
Expect this to be
well, but I'm trying to answer your question. The one at number 4, building number 4, if you had a Founding Farmers or you had a Clyde's, I'm assuming you'd probably have some people from Bowie itself maybe going in there, because they seem to be pretty well-respected, well-liked restaurants. But it's also, you've got 1.5 million square feet of office there. So the office lunch, I go to Copper Canyon and Woodmore Town Center a lot because it just happens to be by his office. It's always full on a lunchtime. So, I mean, it's a nice destination. People like it. That's what we're trying to envision in that one. The other ones are sort of the fast casual, which we discussed.
The vast majority of support will come from the uses in the center. That's
right.
the design.
Say that again.
The vast majority of usage of these tenant retail spaces will come from the users, occupants, employees of this center. That is the intent.
Yeah.
It doesn't preclude others from outside from coming in, but it's meant to address the needs and wants of our tenants.
It's called a neighborhood center. That's kind of what they're called. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm getting that.
First, I'd like to mention that I'm really in agreement with everybody here about the concerns about the traffic in and out and on Route 1 going up and down and into the neighborhoods. But I also had a question about the retail center itself and the parking. How much of that is permeable?
10%.
10%.
10%.
That's per the, is it the covenants?
Per our stormwater management requirements.
Something that there's supposed to be like a maximum of 290 parking impermeable or impervious.
Right.
And you were talking about 317, that would be what?
Well, that's a combination of on street, which is the public right of way, that's public road, and then there's the off street, which is our parking lot. We have a stormwater management plan for the overall project, and it says that for surface parking, if soil conditions allow, and the water needs to infiltrate if you're going to have permeable pavement, you're to do 10%. We're proposing 10% for our surface parking here, so we're in compliance with our stormwater management. Other aspects of this project, like the Aspen, structured parking. So that eliminates acres of asphalt for a surface parking lot. So that in and of itself is a sustainable, stormwater management light design element. So
what is that for again? I wasn't quite clear.
That's for the Aspen.
The apartment.
I'm sorry, the apartment
The
building.
multifamily.
The multifamily.
Because it's a deck. It's four decks.
Okay.
The parking. Meaning, if you have a single-family home, you have parking, everything's sprayed out. This is kind of going up, so it's more compact.
Are you all doing green building in this project?
So this project, if you were under this design guidelines for the conceptual site plan, these design guidelines were designed under to the principles of LEED ND, which is essentially looks at a macro sense of how the project's oriented, its efficiencies, its shade, its use of stormwater devices. So it's got. So I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
Yes or no?
So that, well, it's a complex answer to what would be a simple question. So the design guidelines itself, how this is laid out, how the east-west boulevard, has the solar orientation. That's a LEED ND principle, which is a green design principle.
Okay.
For the building construction itself, Andrew.
Yeah, so we have the buildings, the architect's saying they're designing it with the use of shading devices on the buildings to mitigate solar heat gain, high-performance glazing in windows and doors, maximizing daylight, use of LED lighting, enhanced building envelope analysis, high-performance building envelope, VFD, which is variable frequency drive HVAC systems, durable materials, brick composite lumber, with recycled content, low VOC, which is volatile organic compound materials, and construction waste management practices.
So, sort of. Yeah.
Which is all canceled.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Car sitting on 301.
Right. That's okay. But, so yeah, kind of.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
So all these are on videotape. I watched it today. There's the stakeholders from 27th is on tape, and the BAPB on the 14th is on tape. So you can go look at, where the other stuff, you can just see it again and go over and over again like I do. And we'll be in front of City Council, I think, next Monday on the 2nd of April. And again, we're just discussing the retail element of the overall scheme.
But thank you for your comments. Thank you for coming out tonight and expressing your concerns, particularly about the elements, beyond the retail. But it's they are heard, and we're open to continuing the dialogue, open to finding opportunities to work together. But again, we do appreciate your input and feedback, and hopefully you got something out of tonight.
So I play this for the county council, the city council, and the governor, please.
Play the video, you mean?
That's up to us to do.
Play it for a wall.
That's not.
And then tell them from us that if they don't want to get another job, listen to what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Oh, we'll be around for any other questions.
Yeah, hold on, there's one left.
Probably need a serious drink.
Seriously.